What would happen if tomorrow morning the Premier League announced a rule that instantly changed football forever?
Crucial Premier League meeting is taking place in London tomorrow. Now, could we be seeing a salary cap in the Premier League for the very first time?
A rule that tells Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, and every club in the league,
you cannot spend past this limit, no matter how wealthy your owners are. Some believe this would create fairness and protect football's future, while others argue it would destroy the very league that the world considers the most competitive. Today, we'll break down why the Premier League is considering a salary cap, how it would actually work in practice, how it compares to the NBA and La Liga, and whether it would help or harm English football. A salary cap is essentially a restriction on how much a club can spend on player wages.
Because make no mistake, the Premier League are going to change their financial regulations.
It's a familiar concept in American sports, but in European football, it's almost unheard of. Recently, Premier League executives have been discussing the idea to limit spending and create more financial stability across the league. But the moment this idea surfaced, it became one of the most divisive topics in football. Supporters believe it will protect smaller clubs and stop reckless financial behavior. Critics argue it will punish successful clubs and weaken the league globally.
Clubs will not be able to spend more than 5 times what the bottom club in the Premier League receives from the Premier League.
One major reason the Premier League is even considering a salary cap is the rapid rise in wage inflation. Over the past decade, player salaries have reached unbelievable levels, especially at the top clubs. Teams like Manchester City, Chelsea, and Manchester United spend hundreds of millions per year just on wages,
creating a financial gap that clubs like Brighton, Brentford, and Bournemouth
simply cannot compete with. At the same time, financial instability has already hit several clubs hard.
Derby County, Reading, Wigan, and even Everton
have faced serious financial crises due to overspending and mismanagement. A salary cap is seen as one possible solution to reduce risk and maintain healthier budgets.
On top of that, UEFA's new financial rules
are pushing clubs to reduce wage spending as a percentage of their revenue, meaning the Premier League may eventually be forced to align with stricter regulations.
Now, these new rules would mean that clubs would only be able to spend a maximum of 85% of their revenue on player costs.
If the Premier League ever introduced a salary cap, it would almost certainly take the form of a soft cap, a system that places a recommended spending limit on clubs, but still allows some flexibility. Instead of a hard, uncompromising ceiling that no team can cross under any circumstances, a soft cap gives clubs room to maneuver, but at a price. Teams could exceed the designated wage limit if they choose to, but doing so would trigger financial penalties such as costly luxury taxes, transfer restrictions, or even point deductions depending on how far they exceed the threshold. In essence, the league wouldn't necessarily stop you from spending more, but it would make overspending uncomfortable enough that clubs would think twice before doing it. Most experts believe the cap would be tied directly to each club's revenue, rather than imposing one universal number for all 20 teams. This is because the financial landscape of the Premier League varies dramatically. Manchester United generates over £600 million annually, while a club like Luton Town or Bournemouth might bring in a fraction of that.
What anchoring means is that clubs will not be able to spend more than 5 times what the bottom club in the Premier League receives from the Premier League.
A revenue-based model means richer clubs would still have more spending power, but within a controlled formula that prevents them from dominating the wage market without consequences. It also forces clubs to run themselves more efficiently, since sustainable revenues translate into sustainable spending. Under this kind of structure, big clubs would feel the impact immediately. Teams like Manchester City, Chelsea, and Manchester United, who currently operate with some of the largest wage bills in Europe, would be pushed into difficult decisions. They might have to restructure existing player contracts, spread out wages over longer periods, or let go of high-earning stars simply to maintain balance within the cap. Some clubs may avoid blockbuster transfers altogether, not because they can't afford them, but because they can't justify the wage implications under the new restrictions. Over time, this could fundamentally change how top clubs build squads, manage player contracts, and approach long-term planning. On the other side of the league table, smaller clubs stand to gain significantly. Teams like Brentford, Brighton, Fulham, or Nottingham Forest, who often struggle to match the financial firepower of the traditional giants, would finally operate on a playing field that feels a little less tilted. Instead of entering financial arms races they can't win, they would be competing in an environment where smart recruitment, strong youth development, and tactical identity matter more than pure financial muscle. A salary cap would protect them from overspending out of desperation, reduce the pressure to gamble on risky contracts, and help stabilize their long-term sustainability. For many mid and lower table clubs, such a system could be the difference between survival and collapse. But perhaps the most interesting consequence is how the entire culture of Premier League transfers would shift. Agents would lose some leverage in wage negotiations. Star players might no longer receive astronomical offers from multiple English clubs at once, and the era of unlimited bidding wars could come to an end. Whether this would be good or bad for the league is still up for debate, but one thing is clear. A salary cap wouldn't just change how much clubs spend, it would change how English football operates at every level. To understand how this might play out, it helps to look at the NBA, one of the most famous examples of a salary cap system. The NBA operates under a soft salary cap with a luxury tax. Teams that exceed the cap must pay heavy financial penalties, which discourages overspending and helps maintain competitive balance. The NBA also has a draft system and a rookie wage scale, which ensures talent is distributed fairly across teams. But the NBA's structure is very different from European football. It's a closed league with no promotion or relegation, and television revenue is shared evenly across all teams. That makes a salary cap much easier to enforce. Football, by contrast, is an open global market where clubs compete internationally, and revenue differences are massive. Copying the NBA's model could create more problems than it solves. La Liga offers another comparison, using one of the strictest financial control models in world football. Clubs in Spain can only spend based on audited financial performance, which led to famous cases like Barcelona being unable to register new players because their wage bill exceeded the limit. While La Liga's system prevents reckless spending and keeps clubs financially healthier, it can also be extremely restrictive. Big clubs often feel handicapped and unable to compete with wealthier European rivals. If the Premier League adopted a similar structure, it could create tension between financial safety and sporty ambition. A salary cap could bring several benefits, including greater financial stability for mid-table and smaller clubs. It would reduce pressure to overspend just to survive and might create a slightly more balanced league. More responsible financial management could also prevent future cases of clubs falling into administration or collapsing entirely. However, the drawbacks are equally significant. The Premier League is already the most competitive league in world football, with multiple clubs capable of finishing in the top 4 or challenging for trophies every season. Introducing a salary cap might unfairly limit the ambition of big clubs who generate massive global revenue. It could also make it harder for Premier League teams to attract top players, especially when clubs in Spain, Germany, or Saudi Arabia can offer unrestricted wages. Enforcing the cap would also be extremely complex due to commercial revenue differences, potential loopholes, and legal challenges. In my view, while the Premier League's interest in a salary cap makes sense from a financial protection standpoint, the risks outweigh the benefits. The league's global dominance is built on its ability to attract the best players, managers, and talent in the world. A strict salary cap could weaken that advantage and push star players toward leagues with fewer restrictions. The Premier League is already thriving competitively, and introducing a limit might disrupt a system that currently works better than any other in world football. So the real question becomes this: would a salary cap protect the Premier League's future, or would it hurt the very thing that makes it the greatest league in the world? The debate is far from over, and fans, players, owners, and officials all see the issue differently. But one thing is certain: if a salary cap is ever enforced, football as we know it would change overnight.
And also, some of the biggest football agencies have come out and warned the Premier League. If you vote for these measures tomorrow, we regard anchoring as being a form of salary cap, and we will not accept that. And you better expect a legal challenge if you vote to introduce anchoring tomorrow.